People need to hear these stories. We don't always hear what goes on in an entrepreneur's mind.
Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out the video today. We are going to learn a little bit about emotions. I got interviewed the other day from somebody who was asking all kinds of questions about the emotions that you go through when you have to close down your shop. And so here I am today. We are going to talk about emotions, and I'm going to bring you guys right over here, and we're going to have a friend ask me some questions about emotions. So we're going to learn about the emotions of dealing with your business, the emotions of opening, closing, dealing with staffing problems. It's such an important element of business, and we don't talk about it enough. So
this is Andrew. He runs a group in Taiwan of business entrepreneurs that are interested in helping us make the coffee shop better. He decided that he wanted to start by interviewing me about my emotions. He's going to ask questions and I'm going to answer them. Here we go.
What I want to talk about and get Chris to share with us are the emotional impact that having to shut a business down can have on an entrepreneur and people around in the community that they've built up.
I think for me it was really important, really special to be able to create a community space. And honestly, when we got into coffee in the first place, I didn't know that much about coffee. I feel like I still don't, but I knew that I had had so many great times of conversation with people over a cup of coffee or at a meal. And I feel like food and drinks is such an important part of that. So my aspiration wasn't necessarily as much on the financial side as it was really on the community building side, creating a space where people could come in, build relationships, maybe even get skills like English that they needed to help them to learn and grow, and to really just be a supportive community, an open space for anybody to come into.
Yeah.
I remember when we first opened, it was such an amazing thing to step back and think that over the course of the few months from when we first conceived of this idea all the way through to actually pulling open the door and having our first customers come in and buy, that was such a high, to create this space and then have people come in. I was also really encouraged and really just amazed to see the first few times that we broke even in 1 month of sales. Like we were actually able to pay the bills that month. That was such an amazing time for me. And then I think about all of the lives of people, whether they're workers in our coffee shop or people that have come through as customers, talking about how this has been a space, a place to support them, a place to help them, a place for them to learn and grow, and that they've really felt blessed by being a part of this community. That's meant so much to me. That's really been a high, and knowing that each one of those conversations around that cup of coffee has been so really special. And then over the years, we've also combined with a lot of different organizations or individuals to do different events. And I just love seeing this place filled with people. No seats are open and everybody's coming in and they're enjoying that community space together. All of those times feel so special to me. Back in 2020, when the rest of the world was totally destroyed over COVID, we did so well in Taiwan, right? It was just such a different experience. And so I don't think we felt a lot of that in 2020, except that I had an opportunity to bring on an investor to expand into a new area, and they said, we're not sure what's going to happen with COVID, so they pulled out. That was tough, but I think what really started to get me was in May of this year when the CDC shut everything down. Actually, 2 days before that, I thought I might have COVID because I had gotten a fever and I was feeling sick. And I actually just went in to get some regular medicine from the doctor, and they said, oh, you have a fever. You can't come in. You have to go to the hospital right now and get tested. So I had to wait for 2 hours wondering, did I have COVID? Am I going to be one of those super spreaders? That's what was so, it was like gut wrenching for me to wonder like how many customers had I seen over the last few days? Was I spreading it everywhere over what were going on here? And fortunately, the next day I got the test results back that we had been negative, but I didn't know what was going to happen, and so I had already kind of settled in my mind that we were going to shut things down. I think that was really hard for me because it's this place of unknown. You don't know what's going to happen, and I think that place of unknown is where anxiety, where all kinds of fear, where all kinds of doubt comes in because you're just not sure. Yeah. And COVID has done that to us over and over again. So I think for my business, it was really difficult to just imagine what could possibly happen. And I think our brains often go to, what's the worst possible thing? Like, I'm positive and everybody else, I super spread it, and now Wanhua is even a worse place now because Aroma made everyone get COVID, and that was just like overwhelming, and then realizing how, even before that, at the beginning of May, end of April, that our sales were starting to go down a little bit by then because the cases were picking up. So I think that the business side of it for me was really, I felt the effects of it, especially in the middle of May when we were having to really go into level 3 and knowing that was going to be devastating. I think it felt like a big waste. I felt like, man, we put all this effort into having this space and blessing all these people, trying to create this community atmosphere. And we had even just a couple weeks before COVID took over, we had just launched a new product, a tiramisu that was really good. And I was putting all kinds of money into Facebook ads and trying to get people to start coming and buying this new product. And then when we were like, hey, we're maybe going to have to shut this down, that was really hard for me because I knew that it was going to feel like all that previous work that we had done had just vanished into thin air. I think that was really hard for me. But on the other hand, it kind of made sense a little bit. And so I think that's where it was kind of this heart-wrenching thing on the one hand, because I knew that it was going to feel like a waste and it was going to affect employees, especially part-time ones that maybe we couldn't afford to give them hours. We still paid salaries, but in the middle of all of that, just trying to figure out like, how are we going to do this? It felt really, it felt kind of overwhelming to have to decide that. And so I think a lot of times in business we talk about, okay, what do the numbers say, And the numbers don't reflect how you feel emotionally. But I think for me, it was like, I don't think opening just for like to go or anything like that is necessarily going to help us. And so in that sense, from the numbers perspective, it kind of made sense not to try to be open, but it was still just really, really difficult in that moment. So it's kind of a balance, I think, of the numbers of what's going on and then also the emotions of how is this going to affect the previous work and going forward, what's going to happen. We just still don't know. I know that everybody has to make their own personal decision, right? You always have to kind of do what's best for you or best for your family. And sometimes there's not always alignment between what you personally need and the employer that you work for needs. And I totally get that. We opened back up again in August and we tried it for a few weeks. And I could tell that there was just this loss of passion for the people that were working at the time and kind of just a sense of frustration and struggle. When they told me on my birthday that they weren't going to keep working, it was like, oh man, that just felt like kind of like a dagger in the heart, realizing that I was going to have to just shut down. Like we didn't have enough employees because these were the two main employees that were doing all of the work in the day-to-day, and we just couldn't do it without them at that point. And so I think when I had invested so much time and energy and finances into bringing them on and getting them trained in and investing in their learning and growth, like sending them to classes and helping them get other things like that. It felt, and I know that it wasn't their intention at all, but it felt, the emotional side of it felt like a betrayal almost in some ways, Absolutely not their intention at all. They were making the best decision for them at the time, but it's so frustrating when you put so much effort and energy into someone's life and then just like that within a couple of days, it was all gone and dissipated. I think that was really overwhelming for me because I don't just consider the people that work here like a worker that you can just get rid of, I think I've only fired one person in all 10 years that we've had the business. And so it's like, it was devastating for me to have that happen in that way and to feel like, man, they're just moving on and I'm kind of stuck here. Now I need to pick up the pieces and figure out what to do next. I think a lot of it revolves around those two weak points or those two vulnerable places in my life. I feel, on the one hand, I feel like I want to have a community of people and for us to all get along together. And then I also want to get things done. And I feel like when the business closes down, you fail in both of those things. Like I'm not able to hit the sales goals because the doors ain't even open. And then on top of that, it's like, how are the people that I've been letting down? I feel that kind of darkness creeping in of the teammates that I let down. How could I have helped them better? And you kind of have that sense of regret. You feel that angst inside of you, that struggle. And then the customers, like just the other day when I was recording that first video, that introduction video, as I'm recording that video, someone walks by and reads the sign on our door that says we're closed. And I wonder how many other hundreds of people potentially over the last few months have walked by, wanted a cup of coffee, wanted a place to sit down, needed someone to chat with, and couldn't do that because the doors were closed. I feel that kind of anxiety, I think, and that kind of frustration and overwhelming kind of feelings that come to mind when I think about those doors being closed still today as I'm looking at this door closed that should be open.
Yeah.
A balance of two kind of opposing forces. The one is, I want you to have a healthy dose of realism. Like, when I think back to May and the first time that we shut down, it was realistically not going to be great if we tried to stay open and just had Food Panda. Like, we weren't going to be able to compete in that, and that's the realism of what we're dealing with. The world is changing because of COVID. We're not going to be able to get around that. So many things are changing. Let's be realistic and honest about that and not lie to ourselves. But at the same time, I also want to encourage you to stay hopeful and to stay passionate, because we've seen so many stories. At least I've read so many stories, I've seen so many stories, and I believe that many of us in this group with our individual businesses, including Aroma here, can do this same thing, can have one of those comeback, kind of a Cinderella type of a story where we can say, listen, we were already in the grave and yet here we are coming back again. Because when you stay hopeful and when you stay passionate and when you get back to the roots of the reason why you started that business, whatever it was, I truly believe that you're going to be able to navigate a way to make it happen. It's not going to look the same way as it did before, but I just want to encourage you, as you're feeling the tension of that business, I really believe that there is a way, and that I even want to encourage you to like be part of this community, because as we move forward together, I believe that we can make that way and broaden that path for all of us to join on it together. Like I said earlier, I just really believe that the best is yet to come. So I'm excited to discover that future together.
Yeah, definitely. Chris, I'm immensely grateful for you for sharing all these deep thoughts and emotions with us. It's definitely incredibly valuable.
Thank you.
People need to hear these stories. We don't always hear what goes on in an entrepreneur's mind when they go through these extreme difficult times. So thank you so much.
What's first?
Coffee.
The coffee.